The German family faced record high temperatures, reaching up to 124 degrees Fahrenheit. The minivan had been abandoned since 1996 in a desolate area, with clear signs indicating that someone had tried to drive it out of Death Valley but couldn't. There were no traces of the family members, which led investigators to begin suspecting that they might still be alive. 4 lives, a family of 4. A dream road trip through one of the most treacherous landscapes in America, Death Valley. At first, it seemed like an ordinary vacation, filled with excitement, the promise of adventure, and the freedom to explore. But this journey would soon unravel into something far darker. The temperatures soared beyond 115 degrees Fahrenheit. The terrain was merciless and unforgiving. And soon, silence would fall over everything. A locked minivan, abandoned in the middle of nowhere, with no sign of its occupants. Not a single clue, no trace left behind. They vanished into the desert without a sound, as though the earth itself swallowed them whole. For 13 long years, no one knew what had happened. Then, 2 hikers, unsuspecting and miles off the trail, stumbled upon something that would shatter the silence. What was once just another missing persons case would become something far more sinister. A mystery that baffled investigators for over a decade. This was no ordinary disappearance. This was the story of the Death Valley Germans, a family whose dream vacation became a nightmare that would expose the terrifying consequences of one wrong turn. July 27, 1996. A green Plymouth minivan, rented from a Los Angeles car company, should have been returned by now. But it wasn't. Buried in the sand miles from civilization, the van remained untouched, its passengers nowhere to be found. Edgar Remes, his girlfriend Cornelia Meyer, and their 2 young children had simply disappeared. Where were they? What happened? The journey began innocently enough. On July 8, 1996, 4 travelers, Edgar Remes, an ambitious architect, his 11-year-old son, George Weber, his girlfriend, Cornelia Meyer, and her 4-year-old son, Max Meyer, arrived in Seattle. They were filled with excitement, eager to explore the vastness of America. After a few days in Seattle, they made their way to Los Angeles, where they picked up a green 1996 Plymouth Voyager minivan. Their plan was simple: drive through Southern California, soak up the sun, and experience the landscape that had long captivated their imaginations. Have you subscribed to my channel yet? Please hit that subscribe button for me. In return, I'll keep bringing you even better videos about the world's most terrifying cases. Don't forget to leave a comment down below if you have any ideas or suggestions. Yet something wasn't quite right. Remes, just before entering Death Valley, made a strange call to his bank in Germany, requesting $1,500 to be wired to him. A fax to his ex-wife followed soon after, asking for additional funds money that was never sent. Was there more to this trip than just a family vacation? What did Remes know? What had they gotten themselves into? And so the mystery begins. The heat of Death Valley in July 1996 was unbearable. Temperatures reached a blistering 124 degrees Fahrenheit, making the very air feel like fire against your skin. For the German family, this wasn't just a road trip, it was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime. As they drove deeper into the park on July 22nd, they thought they were prepared. They had researched the landscape, or so they believed. At Furnace Creek, they bought copies of the Death Valley National Monument Museum text, German editions to help them navigate this unforgiving desert. But research alone couldn't prepare them for the true dangers of this place. They didn't know the land, its silence, its hostility, its ability to erase people. That night, instead of spending a fortune on hotels, they camped in their minivan in Hanapa Canyon, near Telescope Peak. It seemed like a practical choice at the time, a peaceful rest before continuing their exploration. But the air that night was thick with danger, even though it was invisible, something the family couldn't see coming. The next day, July 23rd, they set out to explore. A 35mm camera clicked away as they visited various tourist spots, capturing memories. In the visitor logbook at the Warm Spring mine site, they left a brief note in German. "We are going over the pass." Signed Connie, Egbert, George, and Max. It was a simple statement, but one that would carry weight they could never have understood. The pass they referred to was most likely Mangle Pass, a route that appeared easy on their German maps but was actually treacherous, almost impassable for a regular vehicle. The Plymouth minivan they were driving wasn't built for such terrain. It had no chance. Somewhere along the way, they visited the geologist cabin in Butte Valley. There, they took an American flag as a souvenir. It wasn't vandalism, but a simple, misguided act of collecting memories. They didn't understand the gravity of what they were taking. As the day dragged on and the heat bore down upon them, they made another decision. One that seemed logical at the time. They opted for a shortcut back to the main valley through Amble Canyon. But what they didn't know was that Amble Canyon wasn't a road at all. It was an abandoned mining track, deserted for decades. The wrong turn they took was more than a mistake. It would erase them from history. And from that moment on, they were doomed to vanish into one of America's most mysterious and unsolved disappearances. By the end of July 23, 1996, the German family found themselves trapped in one of the most remote and inhospitable corners of Death Valley. The unforgiving landscape stretched out around them, endless, desolate, and unforgiving. With no cell service, no communication, and no realistic chance of rescue, their dream vacation had transformed into a fight for survival. The family had planned to return to Germany on July 27th, but as days passed, it became painfully clear that something had gone terribly wrong. No one had heard from them. No one had seen them board their flight. Remy's ex-wife, Heiko Weber, was the first to sense something was off. She became frantic, unable to reach her ex-husband or son. Alarmed, she reached out, contacting authorities and expressing her growing fears. German officials reached out to their American counterparts, but with no clear crime scene, no leads, and no witnesses. The case slowly slipped into a bureaucratic black hole. It was as if the family had vanished into thin air. The truth seemed impossible to grasp. The family could have gone anywhere. They could have staged their own disappearance. But why would they do that? Who could understand the motive behind such an act? The questions piled up, yet the answers remained elusive. 3 months passed. October 21st, 1996, was a crisp autumn day when Death Valley National Park Ranger Dave Briner conducted his usual aerial surveillance. From the helicopter, he scanned the desert below, searching for signs of illegal activity, like hidden drug labs that sometimes dotted the remote corners of the valley. It was during this routine flight that something caught his eye: a vehicle that had no business being there. In Anvil Canyon, about 2.4 miles from Willow Spring, sat a minivan, its presence out of place in this barren wilderness. This wasn't the type of vehicle you'd expect to find on an abandoned mining road. The minivan was a 1996 Plymouth Voyager, with California plates, locked tight, and 3 of its tires completely flat. The sand around the vehicle was disturbed, showing clear evidence of someone desperately attempting to drive the van out, despite the deflated tires. The axles were buried deep in the sand, revealing that the van had been stranded for quite some time. But where were the passengers? Briner's stomach sank. There was no sign of life, only an eerie quiet. The mystery deepened. What had happened to the family? Why was their vehicle abandoned in this godforsaken corner of the world, miles from civilization? Ranger Briner's pulse quickened as he radioed for backup. Something wasn't right. The vehicle wasn't just out of place, it was a mystery waiting to be solved. When California Highway Patrol ran the license plates, the answer only deepened the enigma. The 1996 Plymouth Voyager had been reported stolen by the Los Angeles Police Department on September 10, 1996. The vehicle, once a rental owned by Dollar Car Rentals, had been rented to 4 German tourists on July 8th. But this discovery raised more questions than it answered. If the Germans had been stranded here since late July, their chances of survival were slim if they had survived at all. The scorching desert heat, with temperatures reaching up to 107 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and barely dipping to 79 degrees Fahrenheit at night, would have made survival without shelter or water impossible. Hours, not days, was all they could have lasted. On October 22nd, Death Valley investigator Eric Iman arrived at the scene, his mind racing with questions. Apart from the tracks left by Briner the day before, there were no other signs of movement around the van. Stepping inside, Iman's heart sank. The van was a snapshot of a family vacation gone horribly wrong. Luggage, children's toys, camera equipment, and rolls of film lay scattered around. Full bottles of beer and bourbon, sleeping bags, camping gear, everything seemed normal. But then there was the guidebook, purchased at Furnace Creek, and the American flag taken from the geologist's cabin in Boot Valley, proof they had strayed far from the beaten path. The family had wandered off course. The van's location, over 3,000 feet up, made it clear. Without water and shelter, the desert's fatal grip was inevitable. As the van was removed, the largest search and rescue mission in Death Valley's history was set into motion. But would it be too late to uncover the truth? October 23, 1996, Death Valley, a vast and merciless expanse, now became the stage for the largest search and rescue operation in the park's history. What began as a simple missing person case had now evolved into something far more chilling, a desperate race against time. 3 months had passed, and everyone knew this was no longer a rescue mission. It was a recovery operation. The first to arrive were the China Lake Mountain Rescue Group, followed by trackers from the Indian Wells Valley Search and Rescue Group. 8 mounted units from the Kern County Sheriff's team brought horses that could navigate the rough terrain where vehicles failed. The search team spread out from Anvil Canyon, covering the unforgiving landscape like spokes of a wheel, each group responsible for their own sector. Then came the discovery that sent a chill through every investigator. About 1.7 miles east of the van, a member of the rescue team found something out of place, a beer bottle half buried in the sand, beside a lone bush. Nearby, a large seat print in the dirt suggested someone had sat there for an extended period. The bottle matched those found in the van. One of the Germans had walked east, but why was this the only trace left behind? Where did they go, and why had no further evidence surfaced? The mystery deepened with each passing hour. As the second day of the search began, the desert heat bore down on the vast barren landscape of Death Valley. Teams from Nye County, Nevada, and Inyo County, California, arrived with a sense of urgency. 2 helicopters hovered above, their blades chopping through the still air, scanning the endless desert below for any sign of the missing family. The search areas were vast: Anvil Canyon, portions of Warm Spring Road, Butte Valley, Mingle Pass, and the route that connected the canyon to the main valley. These seasoned professionals with decades of desert rescue experience knew the terrain intimately. They knew how to read the landscape, how to spot even the faintest signs of human presence: trampled dirt, a broken branch, a footprint. They methodically worked their way through every wash, investigated every cave, and checked every possible shelter where a desperate family might have tried to escape the scorching heat. Yet the desert offered nothing: no footprints, no signs of life. Just the vast emptiness, as if the land itself had swallowed the family whole. Then, on October 25th, more teams arrived, each one determined to find answers. One team searched between Amble Canyon and Badwater Road. Another focused on the southeast edge of the valley. A ranger from the Bureau of Land Management checked Mingle Pass, while teams from Lake Mead and Indian Wells meticulously scoured other sections. They worked tirelessly, piecing together the puzzle of this strange disappearance, but each step they took seemed to lead nowhere. Every effort felt like it was in vain, and with each passing day, the mystery deepened, consuming the searchers and leaving them with nothing but more questions. Where had the family gone? What had happened to them? On October 26, 1996, the sun beat relentlessly over Death Valley as the fourth and final day of the search unfolded. The air was thick with the desperation of the teams, who continued to comb the unforgiving desert for any trace of the missing family. The Death Valley National Park team focused on the areas north of Warm Spring Canyon, searching abandoned mines where a desperate soul might have sought refuge. The Victorville team turned their attention to Stripe Butte Valley, while Lake Mead's group scanned the rugged terrain and walked the length of Warm Spring Canyon Road. A Bureau of Land Management ranger meticulously checked the west side of Mingle Pass, considering all possible routes the family could have taken toward Berat. Meanwhile, the Indian Wells team followed faint footprints near Warm Spring Road and Westside Road, the only promising lead they'd found. Another team from Apple Valley ventured down Westside Road, hoping the family had turned north in search of shelter. 2 helicopters scoured the areas surrounding Amble Canyon, but strong winds made aerial searches nearly impossible. Yet, with no new clues since the beer bottle discovered on day 1, the search was called off. The realization settled like a heavy fog. The family was likely lost forever in the vast, inhospitable desert. The case would remain one of America's unsolved mysteries, a haunting puzzle with no answers. As the search came to a tragic halt, the spokesperson from Death Valley National Park confirmed that around 250 people had participated, yet no trace of the missing German family was found. The team had focused their efforts on the most likely areas, but the desert had swallowed them whole. The case was officially filed away, joining the ranks of America's unsolved mysteries. But the silence of the desert gave birth to whispers. Conspiracy theories began to emerge, each more elaborate than the last. One theory suggested that Egert Remus, an architect with a passion for technology, had been attempting to reach the China Lake Naval Weapons Center. Some believed he was seeking classified information about hybrid propulsion technology. The theory grew stronger with rumors that the family had been recruited into a black ops government program or even eliminated because they had stumbled upon something they weren't meant to see. But those who knew Egert dismissed these dark speculations. He wasn't a spy, he was a family man, simply on vacation. Still, the questions lingered. Why had they vanished so completely? Another theory suggested the family had staged their own disappearance. Egert had spoken of a fresh start, a new life in Costa Rica. Could Death Valley, with its vast, unforgiving terrain, be the perfect place to vanish? A place so remote, so harsh, that no one would think to look for them. But there were flaws in this theory. Why would anyone choose to disappear in one of the deadliest places on Earth? Why risk the lives of 2 children in such a cruel and elaborate deception? And how could 4 people, especially a young child, maintain such a secret for years? The desert remained silent, but the theories continued to spiral, offering no answers, only more questions. As the theories grew darker, one began to emerge that suggested foul play. What if the family had encountered criminals hidden in the remote desert, drug manufacturers, human traffickers, or dangerous individuals who saw the German tourists as nothing more than opportunities? Death Valley's vast barren landscape could easily conceal a crime, providing the perfect backdrop to dispose of any evidence. Could the family have unknowingly crossed paths with such dangerous people, leading to their sudden and inexplicable disappearance? But in 2009, 13 years after the disappearance, a man named Tom Mahoud couldn't let the case rest. A search and rescue worker from Los Angeles County, Mahoud was no professional investigator, but he understood survival and the science behind finding lost people. Something about this case nagged at him. There were inconsistencies in the investigation, missing pieces, and too many unanswered questions. Like an engineer solving the complex problem, Mahoud broke the mystery down into its parts and approached it with fresh eyes. He believed the search had been focused in the wrong areas. Using the German guidebook found in the van, Mahoud mapped out the route the family most likely took. The book revealed a path through Butte Valley and Mingle Pass, past the infamous Barker Ranch where Charles Manson's followers once hid. The family's journey started to make sense when viewed this way. They had left their camping spot on July 23rd and drove south, hoping to find a safe route to their next destination. But instead, they found only an abandoned mining camp, and their fate spiraled from there. In 2009, 13 long years after the disappearance of the German family, Tom Mahoud, a search and rescue worker with Los Angeles County, could not shake the haunting case from his mind. He was no investigator, but he had spent his life finding the lost, saving the stranded, and he couldn't let this mystery go unsolved. Joined by his colleague Les Walker, Mahoud set out to explore the rugged, unforgiving terrain southeast of Gololo Wash, about 8 miles from the abandoned minivan and 4 miles from the China Lake boundary fence. This desolate stretch of land had been largely overlooked, but Mahoud's intuition told him this was where the answers lay. On November 12, 2009, after weeks of scouring the remote desert, Mahoud and Walker stumbled upon a chilling discovery: Cornelia Meyer's remains scattered across about 150 meters of desert floor. Her identity was confirmed with her passport and bank identification, the tragic remnants of her life. The discovery sent a wave of cold reality through Mahoud's chest. He had been right. The family's trail had led them here, to a place untouched by previous searchers. But the story didn't end there. As Walker explored further, he found a small shoe, possibly a woman's shoe or a child's, and a portion of Cornelia's daily planner. Inside the planner were business cards from various places the family had visited during their trip. As Mahoud carefully examined the area, more chilling clues surfaced. They found a 2-liter wine bottle, a clear bottle approximately 70 feet downstream, which was later identified as one of the bud bottles from the family's minivan. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, but they were far from complete. Days passed, and Mahoud and Walker's search continued. Then, just as they were starting to piece together the family's tragic final journey, the remains of Egbert Remies were found, exactly where Mahoud's theory had predicted. The discovery marked the end of years of speculation, conspiracy theories, and countless unanswered questions. The family had headed south from their stranded minivan, seeking salvation at the China Lake Naval Weapons Center, a military base likely deserted and unable to offer the rescue they so desperately needed. The mystery of the Death Valley Germans was finally solved, but the truth was far from what anyone had imagined. No cover-ups. No elaborate deceptions. No government conspiracy. 4 people driven by hope, fear, and exhaustion had simply made a series of choices that led them into a deadly trap. They had made the wrong decisions at every turn, believing each new step would lead them to safety, but each mistake had cost them more. In the days that followed, the search teams uncovered additional remains, though they were not enough to definitively identify the 2 children. But the story had reached its tragic conclusion. The truth was out, and the German families in Dresden could finally begin their mourning with some certainty. They could finally hold memorial services with the answers they had been denied for so long. The mystery that had haunted them for 13 years was solved, and while the families could now grieve, the scars of the lost years would remain forever. But this case, this tragedy, was not just about 4 people who vanished in the desert. It was a lesson. A lesson about human nature, about hope, and about how far people will go when they refuse to give up. Egbert Remies had tried to show his son and his girlfriend's child the wonders of America, a journey that tragically turned into a nightmare. Cornelia Meyer had embraced the adventure with a man she loved, and the children had come along for the ride, trusting that the adults would keep them safe. As their vacation turned into a fight for survival, each decision they made seemed logical at the time. They tried to find an alternative route when their first choice proved impassable. They believed they could make it to safety when their vehicle became stuck, walking toward what they believed to be a place of refuge, each step taking them deeper into a death trap. What seemed rational in the moment ultimately led to their tragic end. The true heroes of this story, however, were not the victims, but the men who refused to let the case fade into obscurity. Tom Mahout and Les Walker, despite not being professional investigators, spent countless hours researching the case, hiking through dangerous terrain, following every logical thread the official searchers had dismissed. It was their persistence, their refusal to give up, that brought closure to the families who had waited far too long for answers. They gave the German families in Dresden the certainty they needed to finally hold memorial services and begin their healing process. Mahout, however, expressed frustration at the lack of cooperation from some authorities. Without his and Walker's determination, he believed the remains might never have been found. Their success where seasoned professionals had failed underscored the power of fresh thinking and persistence in solving even the coldest cases. The case of the Death Valley Germans also served as a sobering reminder of the dangers lurking in America's wilderness areas. Death Valley, with its haunting beauty, is one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. Every year, unprepared visitors underestimate its dangers and find themselves in life-threatening situations. The lessons from this case are clear. Always carry plenty of water and food. Use the right vehicles for the terrain. Inform others of your planned route. Carry communication devices. And above all, never rely solely on outdated maps or incomplete information. The story of the Death Valley Germans has become part of American folklore. Their tragic journey is told and retold as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the enduring power of hope. Their tragedy serves as a reminder that every missing person case represents real people with families who deserve answers, no matter how long it takes. The desert holds many secrets, but in this case, one of them has finally been revealed. And when hope seems lost, when answers seem impossible, the human spirit proves stronger than the desert itself. Please share your thoughts in the comment section. I will discuss this case with you in more detail. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel